Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. It's Ali, Coram, and Shreve here with a breakdown of the action in today's session, Wednesday, May 29th, where we saw the major indexes pull back a little bit, spiking treasury yields, and we'll get into that. Ken, what stocks do you have for us?
I am going to take a look at three different companies that are still pretty compelling growth stories. So the first one is going to be Cava, C-A-V-A, the fast casual Mediterranean chain. Nice earnings report. Also want to take a look at Dutch Brothers, B-R-O-S, and finally online broker Robinhood, H-O-O-D.
Okay, well, we'll get to those three stocks, but first let's take a look at those major indexes. Here's the Nasdaq down about 0.6% in today's session. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 down 0.75% or so. The Dow down 1.1% and declining further from that 50-day line after closing slightly below it in Tuesday's session. And the Russell 2000 small caps down 1.4%. Undercutting the 50-day line here as well. For added context, here's a look at the 10-year treasury yield, now up sharply 2 days in a row after yesterday getting above that 4.5% level, adding to the gains further amid another auction. So, Ken, your thoughts on the index level action?
Well, I mean, I think it's an orderly pullback for the Nasdaq. You can see it traded in a pretty tight range today, held above that 10-day moving average. It was down almost 0.9% intraday, and it did pair that loss a little bit. Looks like we're going to get higher volume on the Nasdaq, so this could be the third higher volume decline that we've seen since May 22nd. So keeping an eye on increasing distribution days in the market, because these can stop a rally in its tracks. But overall, pretty orderly decline for the Nasdaq. Like you said, that 10-year yield was up sharply again for the second straight session.
Yeah. And leaderboard getting in there yesterday with a little TBT action. So a nice trade there, Ken. Let's take a closer look at the S&P 500. We are in a power trend. The Nasdaq clearly leading, NVIDIA contributing to that. The S&P coming in a little bit more, but still holding above its 21-day line as well.
It was interesting. It looks like we're going to get higher volume on the Nasdaq and lower volume on the NYSE. So even though the S&P 500 looks like it closed near its low for the day, it's still holding above its 21-day exponential. That's a key support level to watch. So lower volume on the NYSE today sort of tempered the weakness in the S&P 500. But listen, overall, we've come up a lot since the S&P 500 hit that low of 49.53, and a little bit of consolidation up here might not be a bad thing. So I think a lot of technicians are going to hold out hope that the S&P 500 will hold that 21-day line. If it doesn't, obviously that brings a trip to the 50-day moving average into play, but that still would be a pretty mild decline off highs, even if the S&P does eventually pull back to that 50-day line.
Yeah, and with the weakness in blue chips and small caps, Ken, it does seem like we are seeing waning breadth now as well. A clustering of waning breadth, 2 sessions in a row. We can take a look at our RSP, and this pulling in more than the S&P 500 itself. This is the equal weight S&P 500 ETF down 1%. So we are seeing some damage and perhaps a concentration in leadership. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. The NYSE breadth today was a little over 5-to-1 negative. It was weak yesterday, as you mentioned. So, and that was also the case with the Nasdaq as well. Wasn't quite as weak as the NYSE. I think Nasdaq breadth wasn't quite 3-to-1 negative, but yeah, these equal weighted ETFs here are kind of revealing maybe some weakness underneath the surface. But I think we need to remind people that as you mentioned, so the power trend is still
Mhm.
intact, and we're in a confirmed uptrend as well. So starting to see some mild signs of distribution in the Nasdaq, but certainly not enough to raise the alarm bells. Seeing some growth stocks come under pressure below the surface, but seeing a lot of other stocks acting just fine.
Exactly. Okay, well, let's take a look at Cava, which had earnings come out. Look at this reversal. Huge. I mean, I think it was down 7% plus at one point early on in the session. So to see an upside reversal with it closing up 7%, that's a huge swing, Ken. And I think one more reason why patience pays with these leaders and why you want to wait to see some support at that key 21-day line. And that's what the leaderboard team did.
Yes, indeed, and we were talking about this one just after the open on IBD Live, and the intraday loss here actually got just below 10%. So
Mm.
it was quite an intraday drop. But like I mentioned on IBD Live this morning, this is a leading stock, and we know a lot of leaders tend to act well around their 21-day lines after a little pullback. I wasn't expecting a bounce like this, but that was a pretty strong rebound off the 21-day line, and the earnings report was pretty good. I think investors were initially spooked by news that store traffic was down a little less than 1%. But there were a lot of pretty decent metrics as well. They also raised their earnings guidance and same-store sales forecast. So there were some bright spots in this report. And as a holding in the leaderboard model portfolio, we were happy to see the stock recover like it did.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And just a refresher for those who maybe didn't know or forgot, this is the day where leaderboard entered. That was on 4/26. So definitely enough cushion with that entry heading into the report. And again, patience paying off with support at the 21-day line with a very bullish upside reversal and this stock back at new high ground.
Yeah, it's gonna form a new base at some point. It's probably getting close to that point where it's going to start to consolidate and digest some of these recent gains. But again, back to the daily chart. Even when this was down close to 10% on an intraday basis, it was still because it really helps buying right, and getting a good entry point. So we were able to kind of sit through the volatility, and unbelievable that it hit an all-time high today.
Mhm. Okay. Next on the list, let's take a look at BROS. This is Dutch Brothers, a coffee chain with a nice move today. Was another one on IBD Live that we covered, saying it was actionable as it cleared this trend line and retook that cup buy point at that 36 price level.
Yeah, overall, again, a really solid gap up on earnings a couple of weeks back, and it extended gains after that. That pullback to the 21-day moving average, might seemed a little bit extreme, and it was. But here's a stock that was, it really rallied powerfully above that 30 level. So the pullback to the 21-day line and 2 days of gains, like you said, I think the stock is still actionable here, still in a buy zone from that 36.17 pivot. And just like Cava, this is still a pretty intriguing growth story. A company that still has big expansion plans. We don't have any of these locations in Southern California. I think you have to go up to Northern California to find some. But I look forward to trying it at some point. But still a compelling growth story, just like Cava.
Yeah, a compelling growth story and a turnaround in the chart in the works. Okay. Last but not least, let's take a look at Robinhood. This is HOOD, back in a buy zone. Similar pullback. This one down to its 10-day line before bouncing to retake an entry just above that 20 level.
Yeah, I was interested when Charles Harris started talking about this stock earlier this week or actually it was late last week on Friday when he was a guest, but he was talking about the prospects here, and yeah, I like the look of Robinhood as well. Talk about a company still in the early stages of growth here. They're still reporting very strong metrics, some 30, 40, 50% year over year growth in some areas. Here's a stock that declared or they said they're going to buy back 1 billion in stock. They're going to start that in the third quarter this year, and it's probably going to go over 2 to 3 years. But $1 billion share buyback is no small potatoes here. Like the technical setup, like the fundamentals, still in a buy zone here. So another one worth watching with the market in a confirmed uptrend here.
Yeah. Okay, Ken, we've got some earnings movers to take a look at before we wrap. Reports that just hit the tape, one could say, in after hours trade. Here's Salesforce, which was in a weak position heading into the report. This enterprise software giant down about 15% with the early reaction here in extended trading, Ken.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, maybe the earnings reaction not a big surprise. This one had really turned into a laggard, and sometimes a stock's technicals, price, and volume can flag weakness before the headlines do. So this really had turned into a laggard when it gapped below its 50-day moving average several weeks ago. It tried to retake that line recently, and it got turned away. So definitely weak technicals headed into the report. To see the stock down 15%, wow, just it's going to be a harsh break of the 200-day line. But look at that relative strength line that's basically been lagging ever since the stock hit that high.
Yeah.
Of around 318.71, it looks like. So
Mm.
a good example to focus on the leaders and not the laggards.
Right.
Salesforce was
Mhm.
clearly lagging headed into the report.
Yeah, and Salesforce is in the Dow, so we'll keep that in mind. Only 30 stocks in that blue chip index. Elsewhere, Nutanix in T in X. This one broke out of a double bottom base a couple weeks ago. Heading into the report, it's had a really nice run in the enterprise software group. It's down 8% in reaction to earnings. Then we also have Path in the enterprise software group. This is another one that looked weak heading into the report. This is in Kathy Wood's ETFs, at least one of them. So down 30%. That isn't good. And then we did get, I believe, earnings
Pure Storage. Yep,
from
I was going to mention that.
Yeah, from Pure Storage, or they're coming soon. I don't know if it's out yet because, okay, there it goes. There it's starting to move. I am in this one. I did buy this double bottom breakout, Ken. This stock, as of the moment, up between 3 and 4%. So the lone wolf, it seems, in terms of in that initial reaction after the close here to the upside on earnings.
Yeah, Pure Storage in the same industry group as Micron, which has been a big winner, and Micron also reported really big earnings and had a positive reaction. Well, that was several weeks ago at this point. So their next earnings report is about a month away. But Micron continues to be a strong performer in the data storage group. So don't know what Pure Storage had to say about their outlook, but I assume it was probably equally bullish, just like Micron's was.
Mm-hmm. And we'll have to see. I mean, even with Cava, just because you see one thing after hours or before the open, something totally different could happen during and throughout the next regular session. So we'll have to keep an eye out for what happens with all of these stocks.
Yeah, some stocks, it's really, some stocks are either very liquid in pre-market or after-market trading, and they're trading a large number of shares, so you can trust where the stock is trading. Other times, stocks aren't that liquid, and volume is very light, and you're getting big spreads between the bid and the ask. So just make sure a stock is very liquid and trading heavily in the pre-market or after-market. Wouldn't be surprised if Pure Storage is one of these stocks that is actually trading higher on what looks like pretty good news.
Okay. We'll have to see what happens tomorrow. Thank you, Ken, for breaking all of that down for us. And thanks everyone for tuning in. That is it for today, but we will be back with more tomorrow morning on IEBD Live. And we hope you join us, investors.com/IEBD Live, for all the details on that. We will see you there. And then we'll also see you right back here tomorrow after the close.